I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's taken the time to be with us tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that we have all four of the parish councillors here, Councillor Bell, Councillor Howes, Councillor LaFerriere, and Councillor Pierce, and of course myself on the call. I'd also like to say that we're living in a very good time in the county of Brant. I don't know if people watched council last night, but we received a very prestigious award saying that we are world class and we should be very grateful for where we live and what we have. Our comparables are pretty impressive. We have ribbons that are being cut every day and buildings that are being started every day. And every now and then we have to step back and do things like tonight to make sure that we're doing things properly and that we address things at the base level so that we can prosper as a county. I'm very grateful to see the list of names that are here tonight. And it's nice to see so many friendly faces and so many friends that are on the call. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Walton, and we'll just start tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Bailey. Rob Walton here, General Manager of Operations for the County of Brant. Again, thanks for all of you for attending. For a virtual meeting, this is a good turnout for sure. I think at that last count there was 47 people that had signed up for the meeting. I don't think everyone's in yet, but that's great. So I'm just asking everyone for a little bit of patience. This is Zoom is a new thing for us. This is the first. I'm a veteran of public meetings for decades really, and this is the first electronic meeting that we've done that. So we're going to do what we can to through this meeting, get the information to you. There's stuff posted ahead. We're going to have a presentation tonight, which will be posted online. We are going to take written questions from you tonight through Zoom. But if anyone has trouble getting through to us, certainly contact staff afterwards, and we're going to talk to people to get the consultation that we need during this process. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark Maxwell, the project engineer on this, to take us through the slide deck. It's all yours, Mark.
Thanks, Rob. Here's just say, so the idea tonight is we're going to run through about 30 slides. I think we'll be about 20 minutes, and then we'll open the floor to questions. But feel free, if you find the Q&A tab on there, feel free to submit your questions at any time to get them in there. And then once we get through the slides, we'll start addressing them. And hopefully we answer a lot of your questions as we go through the presentation. So again, welcome to the presentation. The Cedar Street Stormwater Management Class EA, and we're going to talk about some road improvements as well. As we said there on the cover page of the presentation, there's going to be a comment sheet available on the county website. So even if you submit questions, feel free. We'd love to get your comments submitted on a comment sheet, and we'll include them in the project file. So why are we here? The first thing you might think is we want to do some road improvements for sure. That's a logical point that we're starting at, but we want to highlight the main reason is the drainage improvements, because the drainage improvements are a Schedule B project, and I'll explain that a little bit later. So that's the main reason why we have to come and present this and go through a public consultation process, because it's a Schedule B project, and that's the requirement. We're also going to talk about road improvements, which are classified as Schedule A projects, but the main reason is the stormwater improvements that need to happen on Cedar Street. So drainage improvements, as properties have redeveloped on Cedar Street, stormwater runoff has been further confined to the roadway, causing ponding during storm events. This is the main subject of the class environmental assessment. Under road improvements, I've listed there, the current road platform was adequate in the past when there was a handful of homes on the street, but should now be improved to handle the increase in vehicle and pedestrian traffic related to new developments and community growth. The existing asphalt surface is reaching the end of its useful life expectancy in some areas, especially at the south end of Cedar Street. I'm sure you've seen it. So we want to widen the road platform so that we can accommodate 2 lanes of vehicles and accommodate the pedestrian traffic that we're seeing increase on Cedar Street. And we want your input. We've divided this point out into 2 separate bullet points because we want your input specific to the stormwater improvements and specific to the road improvements. So we'll run through just a quick outline. We're going to cover the Class EA process. And as I said, stormwater management is the first priority for this meeting. So we'll talk about that first. We'll talk about the existing conditions, the problem statement, the alternatives that we've identified, and then the recommended preferred alternative. And then we'll jump over to road improvements, some other considerations like water and sanitary servicing, and street lighting, and then we'll cover the next steps and the project schedule. So jumping into the municipal Class EA process, if you've been to one of these public meetings before, you're familiar with this image. This is a diagram showing the process that we need to follow for any larger scale municipal project. There's Schedule A projects, Schedule B, and Schedule C projects. Schedule C projects are required to go through phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 before they move into phase 5, which is implementation or design and construction. Schedule B projects only need to go through phases 1 and 2 before they advance to phase 5. And Schedule A projects or Schedule A plus projects are considered pre-approved. They're the simple projects like repaving a road, something kind of an everyday occurrence for us. So they're pre-approved, but we still want your input on those things. So we initiated this class environmental assessment as a Schedule B project because of the possibility that we might not be able to fit everything for stormwater in the road allowance. So if we need to go outside of the road allowance, that bumps it up to a Schedule B project. So that's the process we're following for this project, even though some of the projects fit into the Schedule A category. So where we are here tonight is we're in phase 2. And if you look down under phase 2 at the yellow highlighted box, this is the point of contact where we reach out to the public and we ask for your input on what we've prepared so far. Okay, so covering the stormwater and the existing conditions, you'll see this is an aerial image of Cedar Street, and it's a little outdated. To the west, you'll see there's 2 vacant land parcels that are actually fully developed now into condo developments. And you'll also notice that there's really no stormwater piping on Cedar Street. The storm sewers in the area are shown as the green lines. You'll see some on Rest Acres Road, some on Lorien Lane, just coming down to Cedar Street. So there's really nothing there yet. And storm sewers are generally designed to handle a 5-year storm flow, to carry that water away without ponding on the road. And there's usually some overland flow routes determined as well. And Cedar Street really doesn't have any of that. And I'm sure, as residents have seen many times, that water doesn't really have anywhere to go, so it ponds in several areas of the street. Because we don't have stormwater management on Cedar Street, all of these new condo developments have been required to handle their stormwater flows and their stormwater runoff on their own site. So what they're doing is they're infiltrating all of that. They're holding it in ponds and infiltrating that into the ground. Next slide here. So as I mentioned, Cedar Street doesn't have any storm sewers extended to it yet. So these are some areas that I've observed some ponding during some heavy storms, probably a 2-year storm that I saw this ponding in. I've heard from some residents that this is fairly accurate. They might be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, and maybe shifted a little bit. But generally, this is what you see during a storm event. And the storm flows generally divide Cedar Street into a south drainage area and a north drainage area. So this brings us to our problem or opportunity statement. And I'll just read through it. I know it's a little bit long, but I'll read through it for. So we said road improvements are required on Cedar Street to provide a safe corridor for all road users. An urban road cross section will be implemented with a wider road platform, curbs, gutters, and sidewalk. As a result of the planned roadway improvements, there will be a need for improved stormwater drainage on Cedar Street to prevent long-duration ponding in the roadway and on adjacent properties. The objective of this study will be to identify the most preferred alternative that is technically sound, cost-effective, socially acceptable, and environmentally responsible. So we developed a few different alternatives that we think are reasonable and practical for Cedar Street. The first one is do nothing. That's the alternative that we always have to consider in class environmental assessments, just considering it as a baseline that we compare all the other alternatives to. Number two is implementing some stormwater management and drainage improvements within the Cedar Street Road corridor, and that could include storm sewers, controlled ponding in some areas, or low impact development features. And that's generally trying to infiltrate as much water into the ground. Number three would be stormwater management and drainage improvements outside of the Cedar Street Road corridor, like as if we can't fit it all in the road corridor, do we need land to do other things with possibly a dry pond or a wet pond, something to hold the water, and also low impact development features outside of the road corridor. So it's the same as two, but outside of the road corridor. And number four is actually a combination of numbers 2 and 3, where we have storm sewers or low impact development features in the road and also outside of the road. So then we evaluate each of those possible alternatives against these evaluation criteria. There are technical factors, which would include stormwater quantity control or quality control. Can it actually hold the water that we need it to hold? Constructability, operation and maintenance requirements. There are also social and cultural factors that we weigh these alternatives against. The construction activity and the disturbance to all of the residents and property owners. The land use requirements, whether they're archaeological or heritage resources that we need to factor in, and whether there's any impact to community events. Of course, we consider natural environment factors like disruption to the terrestrial landscape or ecosystem, the effect on surface waters and the receiving stream, or the impact to the groundwater, and whether we're considering climate change in our design as well. And last but not least, economic factors. We always have to consider the capital costs, operation and maintenance costs, long-term costs, and whether there's an impact to the local economy. So considering these two areas separately, we looked at the south drainage area first. The first alternative doesn't satisfy the problem statement. It doesn't solve the problem. The second alternative would satisfy the problem statement, and we can fit everything within the road corridor. The third alternative outside of the Cedar Street Road corridor isn't a possibility because there's no land available for that. Everything's privately owned. There's nowhere to really put a pond or put a low impact development feature outside of the road corridor. And that rules out number 4 as well. So because we have an existing storm outlet at Lorianne Lane and we can fit everything in the road corridor, that's the preferred alternative that we're recommending. So that would look like storm sewers connecting to the storm sewer at Lorianne Lane. We're recommending a swale on the north side of Cedar Street against the vacant land there that's going to be developed in the very near future. And some LID features like an infiltration gallery under that swale or under that ditch against that development property on the north side of Cedar Street. Now, because we're recommending that as the alternative for the south drainage area, that's actually a Schedule A project because it's all within the road corridor, so a pre-approved project. But moving to the, this is what it would look like here. And the drawing of showing the detail on the road is a little outdated, but what this slide is supposed to be showing is just a drainage swale, or what's going to look like a ditch on the north side of Cedar Street, and outletting over here at the existing Lorianne Lane storm sewer. Moving over to the north drainage area, Do nothing, again, doesn't satisfy the project's problem statement. Number two, we will have to implement something in the roadway. We need sewers to convey the flows to wherever our outlet needs to be, but we can't fit everything there because there's no outlet. There's no outlet at the north end of Cedar Street. There are existing sewers on King Edward, but they are too high to pick up the flows from Cedar Street. So we've investigated alternative outlets. Number three, that needs to be part of the solution because we need lands outside of the road corridor, but that doesn't fully satisfy the problem statement because we need some infrastructure in the Cedar Street road allowance to bring it to the outlet. So we are suggesting a combination of 2 and 3 where we install sewers on Cedar Street, but we do need some the use of private land to get there, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So storm sewers on Cedar Street and through the Cedar View Church property, connecting to sewers on Rest Acres Road. And because the existing sewer on Rest Acres Road is nearing its capacity, we can't just dump everything into that sewer. We need to actually hold water, both at the south end and the north drainage area as well. So we do need to pond some water, temporarily hold it, and let it slowly flow back into the sewers when there's capacity available after the storm event. And while it's being held, it will also infiltrate both at the south and these ponding areas at the north. And again, we're recommending some LID features, an exfiltration sewer, infiltration ponds. And this is what that looks like conceptually. I know there's some detail that we can't really see on the slides here, but what we're really trying to show here is a sewer going through the Cedar View Church property, connecting to existing sewers at Rest Acres Road, and then 2 ponding areas on that property, one close to Cedar, where it already ponds right now, and one a little bit closer to Rest Acres Road. So the water will temporarily pond there, and in less than a day, it'll flow back into the sewers. And this is just an overview kind of showing the overall plan here. So we're suggesting storm infrastructure here at the south end of Cedar Street, flowing into Lorianne Lane, and then a divide between those drainage areas right here, and everything here flowing north along that green line up to a ponding area flowing across the church property. And these are acting as surcharge ponds for whatever excess flow the existing sewer on Rest Acres Road can't handle. And while the water is ponded there, it'll infiltrate into the ground a little bit as well. That was just a very brief overview of what the recommendations are. If you're one who likes the details, we do have a stormwater management report in draft form available on the county website. If you'd like to review that, it has all the details on how they modeled everything. We've modeled a 100-year storm, and we've calculated out to determine that this will handle flows from a 100-year calculated storm. Okay, so that covers the Schedule B portion of the class environmental assessment on the stormwater management side. But this project includes more than that. And like I said, they're mostly Schedule A projects, but we want to present them to all the property owners and all the road users here and get some input. So that includes some planned road improvements, extending water and sanitary servicing where it's missing right now, and improving the corridor for pedestrian and cycling through Cedar Street. So moving ahead to the roadway existing conditions, I've just shown a photo there showing one vehicle. We all know that Cedar Street is very narrow at the south end, even as you go north. It's very narrow to fit 2 vehicles. You can see vehicles right up onto the front yards of some of those homes, and not ideal for pedestrian use as well. So we're proposing that we widen the platform of the road, not significantly, just out to about 7 meters, but then install a sidewalk to the side as well to improve the safety for pedestrians. We have two typical cross section. This one represents what we're proposing for the north end of Cedar Street, and this is just a general cross section. The trees will move slightly one way or the other. The lampposts will move. The hydro poles will move. But this is generally what we're proposing for it to look like. Sidewalk on the west side, and at the south end it'll be on the south side, so it goes kind of around the outside of the bend on Cedar Street. And on the south end, another typical cross section. This one is showing that drainage swale that I mentioned as well. So this is maybe a little bit exaggerated. It's not as deep as it looks. The slopes are 3-to-1, so they would be easily grass can be cut easily with a riding lawnmower. And then below that is an infiltration gallery. You see as just shown as like a clear stone bedding. So water ponds there temporarily, like I said, less than a day. It runs back into the sewer when the sewer can take it. But in the meantime, as it's ponding, it also infiltrates into the ground. And again, the sidewalk on the south side, and that sidewalk will run all the way to connect over to Rest Acres Road. Water and wastewater servicing extensions. So Cedar Street already has water main looped through it, but not all properties have a water service connection. So as part of this project, while we're ripping up the road, we'll be extending a water service to all of those unserviced properties. And similarly, Cedar Street has a sanitary sewer on the north-south section, but it ends just north of the bend on Cedar Street. We can't extend that gravity sewer any further. It's very shallow where it ends. So what we need to do is extend a common sanitary force main beyond that sewer to the south to service all the properties at the south end of Cedar Street. And they'll all need to be on a grinder pump package. We'll talk to all those homeowners individually since it doesn't apply to everyone. So after this project, water and sewer services will be available to everyone, and new services will be subject to connection fees per the Brant County Fees and Charges Bylaw 07-19, which we can provide as well. And to connect to your home to the water or sanitary service, owners will need to complete a public works permit application. Again, we'll provide more information after all of the work is done to everyone who's affected in that way. So these are a little bit hard to see on the slides, but they are available on the county website at brent.ca/Cedar Street EA. So you can download them and zoom in a little bit better and see what we're proposing right at your property. So I won't get into all the details when we can't zoom in, but generally these drawings are starting at the King Edward end and working their way to the south. If you look in the top right corner, it shades which area of Cedar Street we're looking at. So if you scroll through, so we're working from the north down to the south, and what these are showing is the new road improvements that we're proposing, the location of the sidewalk, location of the existing utilities and infrastructure. So we would love if you zoom in on your property and have any comments, submit those into us or submit them in the Q&A tonight. You should be able to see the sidewalk there, and you'll notice that like I said, it's on the outside of the bend, so it's on the south side and the west side, and we are trying to avoid hydro poles. We might try to move them if that's possible, and we're trying to avoid all the trees that we can possibly avoid. We don't want to take any trees down that we don't need to. Another thing you'll notice, I think there was a meeting 2 or 3 years ago, and some of the feedback we received was some concern from residents about the speed of vehicles and possibly shortcutting through Cedar Street to avoid a portion of Rest Acres Road. So there was some concern about us speeding. So what we're proposing is a 3-way stop here at the bend. basically to improve the safety, slow cars down and improve the safety at that intersection. And it sounded like most of the residents would be in favor of that. So a lot of the underground work is happening in this south section where we're installing a common force main, adding services in where they're missing. There will be a new entrance into this proposed development, another condo development here by Pinevest, and the swale on the north side, and a couple severed lots to the south, I believe. So it'll be a lot of the work is at the south end here. And the last drawing, sorry, I'll skip to the last one, showing what we're proposing through the church property. So through the Cedar View church property, this is where we show the alignment of the sewer connecting in at Rust Acres Road and the location of these ponding areas. So we've been in discussions with the church and they're agreeable to this. I think it helps them with some of their parking lot ponding issues as well.
Mark, can I just ask a question? There were a couple of questions asked about hydro and street lighting. So I've sort of answered those by typing in, but maybe just go into a little bit more about that there will be overhead hydro and that we will be adding in street lights.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we have initiated that process with Energy Plus about adding streetlights, and we're not sure exactly what they're going to look like. We're hoping that they can use the existing poles, but we don't know for sure. We're waiting to hear from them. But since we are adding sidewalks, we'd like to improve the safety for pedestrians using the road at nighttime or at 6:30 in November.
Or 5:30.
5:30. Okay. So other
there was
things.
One question. There was another question about, maybe we can answer live now too. Maybe Nick
Sure.
has to answer this, about the width of the road. Since it's 7 meters proposed, what is it? And it varies. So
it
maybe
does
Nick can
vary.
help us out with that.
It does vary, and at the north end, it's very narrow. I think I measured in the narrowest spot, it was about 5.5 meters, so very narrow.
About 5.5 to 6 meters, depending.
Great,
depending on the
thanks,
spot.
Nick. I think the north end is the best. It was the most recently completed, but down at the south end, it's very narrow. So it's not a huge widening, just widening it enough for two vehicles to safely pass each other without riding up onto someone's lawn or putting any pedestrians in danger. So a few other things that we've considered, we have to always take into consideration the existing utility locations. We might have to move some if they're in the way, like I mentioned, the hydro poles. We'll take accessibility into consideration with the new sidewalks. Traffic calming I mentioned with the three-way stop and just trying to slow traffic down and improve the safety at that intersection. Pedestrians and cyclists, I think it'll improve, what we're proposing will improve pedestrian safety with the sidewalk on the south side and the street lighting as well for nighttime users. So we want to ask you, is there anything that we're missing? Is there anything that we should also be considering? Hopefully we're considering most of it, but you, the residents, will think of things that we don't think of. So by all means, submit your questions and comments, and we'd love to hear from you.
Can I just add something, Mark, in the stormwater management? So we are proposing to pond in certain areas there, both on the road at the south leg and on the church. Many of these areas, as you know now, pond water in the existing conditions because there isn't a conveyance system to take it away. We're certainly concentrating that a little, but we're making it a much more efficient system where that water is going to go away especially in low volume storms, very fast. In the high volume storms, like a 100-year storm, now if we had a 100-year storm, there'd be water sitting around there for days. We're hoping that in a day it'll be pretty much gone in the future. So there's really no way to take this water away instantaneously without having a huge pipe all the way down to the Nith River. And that's not really something that the Ministry of Environment or the GRCA considers an acceptable practice. So just in case anybody was wondering about that, why that's required.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Okay, so we've tried to anticipate some of the questions that residents might have about the project so far. I think we have 6 here. So the first one is, how many trees will be removed? Trees will be saved whenever possible. A few will need to come out. There's one large one at the corner, right at the bend of Cedar Street, that needs to come out just because it's in the way of the bend. A row of cedars and a couple as you go north, and they should be shown in the drawings as a conflict. But whenever we can save the trees, we're trying to save the trees, but there are a few that will have to come out. How long will construction last? If we can go ahead and do it in the summer and we get good summer weather, this should be a 2-month project, not including some of the restoration work that usually carries on for a couple months after. But the bulk of the work, where the contractor's working in the road and it's very messy, it should be 2 months. Will the proposed works impact my property? All construction is planned for the road allowance, but they might have to go onto private property a little bit to match in with their grading at driveways and at the front lawns. But basically, it's all in the road corridor, other than what I showed you on the church property. And that will be through an easement once that's established. How long will stormwater pond in the road allowance? We mentioned already, we are planning to pond for a temporary period of time, but within a day, that water should bleed back into the storm sewer system or infiltrate into the ground. How will this project improve safety on Cedar Street? So improve safety for pedestrians, especially by getting them off the roadway that's shared with motorists. And the three-way stop that we're proposing will slow people down and improve the safety on all of Cedar Street, but especially at that intersection. Has an archaeological assessment been completed? That's in the works right now. TMHC, Timmins Martell Heritage Consultants are working on that, and they should be possibly doing field work through the church property as early as next week. And there's been some interest from both Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and Six Nations. They've both shown some interest, so they'll be on site during all of that work. And I think I mentioned there, we don't have anything yet because they haven't done the field work, but that'll certainly be included in the project file once it's completed. And just a summary, why are we here right now? The time is right. We want to improve the safety of the road, widen it out, add some sidewalks. But when we do that, we also want to improve the stormwater drainage, and that requires us to follow the municipal Class EA process. Because we're proposing something that's outside of the road corridor, it bumps it up to a Schedule B project, which is why we're here tonight. We want to receive your input related to that stormwater component, but we also want to receive your input related to the Schedule A projects, like the road work, the sidewalk, street lighting, water and sewer extensions, all of those other things. And next steps, we'd like to receive your comments for the remainder of November, what's left of it, and the month of December. We'll need to complete the archaeological assessment through December and into the new year. We'll finalize the project file for the stormwater component, put it out for a 30-day public review period in January or February, and then proceed with detailed design through the winter months and hope for construction in the spring or summer in 2021. That's our goal, is to be out there digging next summer. Like I said, we want your input. There's 2 methods tonight. So submitting your questions and we can open up the floor for questions, but then also the comment sheets that are available for download. You can fill them in Microsoft Word by typing it in, or print it out and handwrite it in, email it into our office, or drop it by our office. But yeah, we'd like to hear from you. Hopefully we're on the right track. And with that, maybe we'll look at the questions again. Okay, so some have been answered already.
Yeah, I answered some of the easy ones.
Oh, thanks, Rob. Perfect. So will the dry pond be the one at 23 Cedar that's already existing? Can it maintain a large degree of water? If so, no, the proposed ponds are on the church property. That's right. So the hydro lines are staying above ground. Yeah, that's correct. Will there be street lighting added? Yes, that's the plan. The plan to increase the road width to 7 meters. What is the current width? Varies. Thanks, Rob. 5.5 to 6 meters. Will this project take place in 2021 or 2022? Thanks, Nick. You got that one. So the plan is for 2021 unless something slows us down for some reason. And some open questions are coming in. Currently, there will be times that people park their vehicles on the side of the street. How will this be considered? So I assume that's talking about homeowners who possibly park on the street. So if you're trying to discourage the parking, the curbs would make it a little harder for random people to park there. But if it's the homeowners who are trying to just park on their front yard because they're having a bunch of people over, that'll still be possible because we're going to have just rollover curbs that you can ride up onto if you have a whole bunch of people come to your house and you need that parking. That'll still be possible. Except you won't be able to block the sidewalk. Can't park on the sidewalk.
So Mark, I think that we should open this up for discussion from people in their comment form. They should be telling us what they'd like to see there, because parking on the street is always a thing that brings controversy. Some people want to see it happen sometimes and not at other times, and some people don't like seeing it at all. Certainly at the side of the sidewalk, there won't be parking allowed there because you can't park on the sidewalk. On the other side, it'll depend on how we bylaw it. So I don't think we've made any decisions on that, and we would welcome the community's input on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rob. The next one, there's talking about on-street parking. We're not proposing any on-street parking as part of this project.
I'll answer the next one.
Okay.
The county and Pinevest have had a lot of discussions over the design of our project and the project that they're proposing. They have an engineer working for themselves. I see he's actually on the line tonight, so I'm glad to hear him listening to all this. And so we've had a lot of discussions. So the designs mesh, first of all. And we've also had discussions on how the construction of this will work. And so we're talking towards a cooperative way of this happening, so that yes, this road doesn't get built and then destroyed by their trucks, and how we might work cooperatively in the best interest of both the county and the developer. So that discussion has happened. Nothing has been resolved yet, but the discussion is happening.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Rob. Is the drainage on the church property going to be resolved? It floods every rainstorm. Yeah, every time I've been out there after a rainstorm, you can see it ponds at both locations. The church has 2 catch basins, and I believe they're just dry wells or French drains. They're a catch basin, everything flows to it, but they're not functioning properly. So we're proposing to tie both of those drains into our new storm sewer system. So yeah, this project should handle all the church drainage and improve their drainage completely. And we've been in talks with the church, and I think they're on board with everything we're proposing here. What happens to the street after Lorianne Lane? The closed section. Is a sidewalk going there? If there is a sidewalk there, who shovels that? Okay, that's a good question. So we are proposing a sidewalk that carries on through the closed section of Cedar Street. If we go back to this drawing here, so this shows what we're proposing here. Since we're closing Cedar Street, we're going to add a radius to this road. So this just becomes a bend in the road now. This will be closed, but it'll act as a laneway for this property owner here. But the sidewalk will carry through and join in with the walkway on Rest Acres Road. As far as clearing the snow, that's a good question. We will have to look into
I'll
that.
answer that. That
Okay.
sidewalk will be cleared by county staff
Okay.
because it's a part of the major trail. We also will be clearing on the new multi-use trail on Rest Acres when it's constructed. I think part of it's constructed now and part of it isn't. Certainly the construction on Rest Acres Road, for everybody that knows, it will not be entirely constructed this year, but certainly is going to be open to traffic for the winter. And the final construction of the last two roundabouts, the last sections of the four laning, and all of the landscaping will happen in 2021.
Okay. Robert, are you saying that the sidewalk on all of Cedar Street would be cleared, or just that section?
That section and the closed section of the road.
Just the closed section.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next one is Mark. Can you meet myself to discuss the tree removing, etc.? Of course, if anyone wants to meet on site, I'd love to come out there and meet with you. We can talk about the details specific to your property. That's no problem. I've met with a few people already. So I've got your name there. I'll get in touch with you after the meeting, and we can work out a time to meet. Will the permanent closure of Cedar Street at Rest Acres Road, which has already occurred, have a negative impact on construction traffic? I don't see any issues with that. Construction traffic will still have two entrance points, one from Rest Acres and one from King Edward. No, I think we can handle that with the construction phase.
With that, Mark, I mean, we'll take a look at that. There's a good chance that we may limit access from King Edward Street.
Just one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And try to keep it off of Laurier Lane.
Yeah, that would make sense. Will the latest proposed Pineview development be delayed until after construction? Okay, we talked about that already. So we are trying to coordinate our work on Cedar Street with their work with that development. Still working out those details, but of course we don't want to negatively impact a freshly constructed Cedar Street with that job. Are we making use of the natural contours of the north end of the street, or will we change elevations? So I think this might be referencing the dip that's in the road at the north end, and we are proposing to raise that up so there won't be ponding in the road allowance. It pushes it to the east onto the church property where we have that ponding area. So we shouldn't have ponding in the roadway, and we'll probably need to grade a little bit onto those private properties as we raise the road up and match into their driveways.
It'll improve their driveways as well by raising that road grade so they're not as steep coming down to the road.
Yeah, for sure. How will the new Pine Vest development be engineered into this plan? So Rob mentioned that we have been sharing our plans with them, and they've been sharing their plans with us so that everything meshes together and our roads align when whoever gets there first is done. How will Laurier Lane traffic be impacted during and after the construction? Like Mark said, we will have to consider construction access, whether we force it all to come from King Edward or force it all from Rest Acres. Well, I guess we'll have to weigh the pros and cons, what makes the most sense. Bringing it all in from one side makes sense for sure, rather than tracking all that traffic and mud through Laurier Lane. So we'll have to consider that for sure as we write the tender. What potential personal costs do some residents need to be aware of? The majority of this is funded from the tax base. Anyone receiving a new water or sanitary service will have connection fees, like I mentioned. Those haven't been determined yet. It's usually dividing out the actual cost and spreading it amongst the benefiting properties, or there's a calculation based on your frontage. So we need to determine what that is, but there will be connection fees for whoever receives a new water service or a new wastewater service. And we'll have those talks directly with those impacted property owners, because there's only a handful at the south end. I think everyone else has full services.
Yeah, the majority of those properties that'll be connected will be development properties. I think there's one or two maybe that aren't. So yes, we'll deal directly with them.
Has any consideration been given to closing the east-west section of Cedar Street from Lorianne Lane, making 2 no-through roads and thereby reducing through traffic? I don't think we have been considering that as a viable alternative. I think we like the idea of traffic looping for a lot of reasons: garbage collection, snow clearing, emergency access. I don't know if we would entertain that. It would slow down traffic and shortcutting traffic, but I think the pros of keeping it connected outweigh the cons in that case.
Can I add into this, Mark?
Yeah.
The other thing is to do that, you'd have to actually create 2 turnarounds at the end of each one. There's no room to do that in here. We have a very, constricted spot to build in. So to accomplish that, we would have to acquire property to do it. And I don't really think it's practical. And when we look at roads operations, emergency operations, and all of those sort of things, all the best management practices lead towards having the road loop through there and 2 accesses for all of those reasons. And Mark made a good mention of waste management is one, snow plowing.
Okay, next one. You talk about spring, summer development. How could this happen when a residential development will also start then? Surely that will take to the fall at least. Yeah,
I'll answer that if you
Sure.
want. Yeah, so the construction that we're speaking of will be for the underground servicing only. The actual development of the housing would continue on after that, if that's what is being implied. So we would be able to get all the underground, the water, sanitary, storm work, road repaved, completed, and then it's just a matter of the housing company or developer building the houses as they go. So it would take longer to actually develop and build out the houses, but our work would be done in a couple of months.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. The corner on the east side of Lorianne Lane and Cedar Street is not really large enough for the 2 turning traffic flows. The sign already took a beating. Is this being addressed? Yes, actually the drawing I have up right now kind of shows what we're proposing there. So if you kind of zoom in on the inside of that turn on the road, you'll see that we're proposing to pull that curb back a little bit and increase the radius to make it a little easier for vehicles to turn, and putting the curb in on the outside of that bend. And what we do whenever we have these is we run some turning templates to show how trucks and vehicles will make that turn, and we calculate what that radius needs to be to accommodate 2-way traffic. So we've run that through here, and it shows that it should work for 2-way traffic there. And yes, that sign was hit. I think there's a temporary sign up there for now, and I think that should be repaired in the near future. And I think the last question we have right now is, will there be a road closed sign put at Lorianne Lane going toward Rest Acres? No, there's no intention for that I've heard of. No. So the traffic will continue to loop through from Cedar to Lorianne Lane, and it'll have an outlet at Rest Acres Road and an outlet at King Edward. That's the long-term plan for Cedar Street.
I think that question's a different question, Mark. It's for the section of Cedar Street that's being closed, and I think we have to look at how the design of what will become a laneway there, coming off of that curve, is to make it obvious that people are not driving in that direction. So we'll work on that fine design, and we'll certainly share that with the landowner, who is the one that asked the question.
Okay, I see. Yeah, and we're hoping that the new curbing will kind of direct people. It'll look like a laneway when we're done.
we probably should use barrier curb there until we get to the laneway and not put the laneway right off the end of the, so people would think it went straight.
Okay.
So we can certainly share that with the landowner out there as we finalize that design.
Okay, great. Now, did anyone happen to see if I missed any questions?
There's a new one at the bottom there now.
Oh.
Outside the lane at the corner. Yes, there will be.
Yeah.
And that's, as I mentioned before, probably at least part of that radius curb should be barrier curb, not rollover.
We'll just have to go over that with operations, the roads guys for the snow plowing and how that is maintained. But at a minimum, there would be a dead end sign put up going onto that laneway.
There was a couple of questions, Mark, that that were answered here that as we were going along that you didn't go over because we answered them later. So somebody asked about whether people could speak. No, the way this Zoom meeting is set up is it for the questions to come in via typing. As we morph these things out, and we'll probably experiment with different things, but this is the way we set this one up. So please, anyone that's got questions, either type them in now, or you can contact any one of the four of us here, Rob Walton, Nick Morris, Mark Maxwell, or Mark Eby.
Yeah, and if you're aware of any of your neighbors who aren't tech savvy, we'd appreciate anything you do to pass them along to us or point them in the right direction. I think everyone received a notice with our phone number and contact information. So at the very least, hopefully they can call us to get in touch. And like I said, we're happy to come out and talk one-on-one, socially distant with our masks on.
Then the last one that's here about whether our GIS group knows about the closure at Rest Acres Road. I don't actually know the answer to that, but we'll certainly, Nick, maybe you'd be a good guy to talk to the GIS people tomorrow and find out whether that has happened.
Okay.
Looks like maybe there's some more new questions on here.
Yeah, there's one about will this presentation be accessible after it's completed? The recorded presentation will be made available on the website then, in addition to what was already presented as the actual slide deck. And the question about the garbage trucks, we will have to speak with solid waste to see how that will be addressed, and we can deal directly with Mr. Vandenberg on that, as he's the only resident.
Yeah, that will be picked up at the end of the what will be his new lane. So it'll have to come out to the curb at Cedar, that garbage.
A couple more are coming in. We have already had people come to our house using their GPS units, which have gotten lost or confused since the permanent closure doesn't yet show on their GPS units. Okay, yeah, we'll look into that. Thank you for the time and answering the questions. Appreciate it. That's great. And will a sidewalk connect from Cedar Street up to Rest Acres Road? Yep. Yeah, so it's going to carry on through and join in with the new sidewalk or walkway on Rest Acres Road, going around the outside of Cedar Street and joining in with King Edward Street as well. Thanks for the meeting and information. Zoom worked well for the session. Oh, good. That's great feedback. Thank you.
So with all these questions, will we be able to post answers to them as well?
Yeah, so we thought we would put these into a Word document and type some questions and post them on the website as well. That's the intention, Mark. Thanks.
Okay, just to clarify for all the attendees.
Yep, yep. Will the closed part of Cedar Street be repaved? I don't think we're showing that on our
Yeah, we will.
drawing.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
It will get repaved.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to go through there with the sidewalk, and I think it is in rough shape. So yeah, we'll clean that up. How many people joined this meeting? Let's see. I see 41 on my participant list.
From my experience at public meetings for a defined area like this is quite a good turnout actually. We've had meetings on streets like this before where we've had a handful. Now Cedar Street has quite a history in some of the past public meetings, of which clearly we've muted the public on this one, unfortunately, except through typing. But hopefully we've been able to answer the questions. And but anyways, I think this is quite a good turnout for sure.
Will the sanitary water reconstruction affect the Cedars condo? There will be a slight interruption that we'll have to coordinate with you, because the Cedars condos has a dedicated force main tying into the gravity sewer at close to the bend on Cedar Street. We're proposing a new common force main that every property that pumps will tie into. So there will be a temporary shutdown where we'll have to coordinate with the condo group and just shut your pumps down. We'll have the new one ready, we tie it in. It'll be like a half day or less shutdown. Water, I don't think there would be a planned shutdown for water. Those will all be new services live tapped into the existing main. So water should be okay.
We didn't plan to have any jokes or anything to fill in time if there aren't questions.
No, we should really add a few slides for that when we run out of material.
One thing for everybody that's still on the call, we would, in your comment sheets, we've had a few people say that they like the Zoom feature for the meeting. Any comments you have about how we did it and how we could make it better next time for yourselves, let us know, and we'll take that all into consideration. As I said, this is the first one of these we've done. Our planning group through the official plan has done a couple, I believe, Mayor Bailey, and we're learning every time we do it, and we'll try and be better at the next one.
Yeah. A couple more rolling in here. Oh, very good presentation. Thanks, Doug. Will affected lawn areas be seeded or sodded? We'll sod. I think generally whenever we're disturbing lawns that are manicured, like regularly cut, we'll sod. Seed in areas out in rural areas where they're not maintained. So everything on Cedar Street would be sodded. Are any speed bumps a consideration to go on Cedar Street? No, we haven't considered that. We think that the three-way stop that we're proposing will slow traffic down sufficiently. So we haven't considered speed bumps. I know that emergency response staff really dislike speed bumps because they slow them down. When we will have actually confirmation on start time for the work. So like I mentioned, there's a few more things we have to do. The archaeology study is one of the big unknowns right now that hopefully it happens next week, the field work, and it'll go through the winter. We have to make sure that everything's okay in that respect before we actually proceed with anything. Beyond that, we need to finalize the study, the project file, put it out for public review, receive public comment, and if everything goes well, we will want to start early in the summer, and we would confirm that to the residents probably with a notice of the project happening. And quite often a project like this, once we have a contractor on board, we'll schedule another public meeting. I don't know what it'll look like by that time, April, May next year. It might look a lot like this. So once we iron out more of the details of construction, we can show you who the contractor is and do a meet and greet. We'll have another public meeting, or at the very minimum, another public notice saying we're planning to start now, mid-May or something. And here's the contractor. Here's our inspector's phone number to contact if anything arises. So there'll be another point of contact in the spring before we actually come out there with equipment.
I would think, Mark, just based on the work needed to finalize the EA and then finalize design, tender, and everything else, that we'd probably be into June or July as an actual start for this project, more than likely.
It could be,
just so people are aware that it's probably gonna be a bit later than April or May. I would think that would be fairly early for us to be able to get to it. So likely June or July would be a more appropriate start time.
Is the plan for sidewalks on both sides of Cedar for the South Road plan? No, we're still only proposing sidewalk on one side, and that's on the south side. The north side is going to be where that ditch or swale is, where we temporarily pond water and let it infiltrate before it can go into the storm sewer. Will this affect the sewer pumps at all? Yes, anyone who's towards the south end who has a grinder pump, like I mentioned for the Cedars condos, there will be a short-term shutdown, and our contractor and our inspector will coordinate that with anyone who's affected. So there will be a couple hours where you're shut down, where you're disconnected from the old force main and tied into the new one. But there will be a lot of coordination before we do that with you. You won't be surprised by that. Will the large tree at the bend on Cedar be taken down? So the inside of the bend at Cedar, yes, that tree does need to come down. Unfortunately, we'd love to keep it, but it's completely in the way of what we're. So try to go up to it here. It's hard to see there, but you can see the outline of the tree, and the trunk is right there. If we even tried to save it, we would be cutting into the roots, and it would damage it a fair bit. So that tree does need to go for sure. And this line of cedars, just because it's conflicting with the new curb line and building the road here. So yeah, unfortunately that one does need to go.
We could go back and just talk a little bit about the traffic calming and, you know, the suggestion for maybe the consideration of speed bumps here. So in this section of Cedar Street, Lorian Lane and the like, there's actually a few features here which actually do provide traffic calming already. The three-way proposed stop at the bend on Cedar between the north-south and the east-west leg certainly is the prime one. The curve over at Lorian Lane and Cedar again would provide traffic calming. And this is a narrow road. Having a 7-meter road, you know, it's what they call road dieting. Have the road no bigger than what it really needs to be. That actually doesn't provide the wide open space where people would feel more safe to drive at a faster speed. So, and, you know, the fact that we're leaving, you know, as many of the trees as we can, having, you know, there's going to be hydro poles and street lights, which are going to be not far off the curb in this. So that all adds to traffic dieting. So I think that we've actually got a fairly good design here when we consider other areas where we've had speeding problems, not that far away from this area actually, and you know, what some of the issues were there. A very wide road, you know, no constraints to driving fast. When these changes are made here, a lot of that will be built in. So
See, someone asked who will be responsible for clearing snow from the sidewalk in the winter. Actually, I think someone who sits beside me here, we could assign that.
I answered that one. Can everybody see the answers?
Yeah, I can see the answers. Yep.
But can all the participants, they can all see the answers too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Is that right, Gary? I just assumed they could.
I do not believe so.
Oh, you don't believe they can?
Oh,
Okay, so we have read through and answered openly most of the questions that have been answered though, so.
yeah. Okay, a couple more have come in. Will there be changes to on-street parking on Cedar Street? We had mentioned that before, that we'll look at the parking. The intention is to not have street parking on Cedar Street, like it's too narrow. And definitely no parking just off the street where it's impacting where it would impact the sidewalk. We are proposing rollover curb though, so like I mentioned, if someone was having a big family gathering, you can still get onto your front yard if you need to park some vehicles there off the road.
So again, I think, Mark, I think that we need to let people weigh in on what they'd really like to see here, and then we'll have to make a decision. As parking isn't always a thing where everybody agrees on in the same ways.
Mm-hmm.
Now I see there's some answers here. There's one fellow here that says he can't see the answers, and there's other people on here that say they can see the answers. And then one says only the ones typed in the Q&A. So
Possibly, Rob, they have to click on the Q&A at the bottom of their screen if they can see that, and then they can open that box up. The other option is we could actually have Mark share the screen and remove the road improvement slide and share the Q&A panel.
Yeah. So another person here said some of the questions are answered. That's right. I've gone in and answered some. Nick has answered some. So those ones have answers right in. The other ones we answered live, no, that isn't typed in there. So, but that'll be in the recording of this. And we did intend on dragging all of this out of here and making it live or making it available on the website afterwards, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to have a Q&A document in PDF that we'll post to brent.ca/Cedar Street EA, where all the other documents are. A couple more have come in. Will the new construction of sanitary water system be independent of the Cedar's condo current sanitary system? Yeah, it will be independent, except for the fact that they'll share a common force main in the Cedar Street road allowance. So the sanitary pump that services the Cedar condos will still be just for the Cedar condos, but the force main will be shared, and we'll coordinate that with the shutdown. Q&A feed is slow. Okay, I think that's just something we need to just have a look at and learn from for our next presentation, figure out how to make the Q&A session maybe a little bit better. No, we can't see the answers. Okay.
So what they have to do is, I've had two people text me that know my my phone number. So you have to go to the bottom and hit the Q&A screen, and then you can see them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. So some people aren't doing that, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, they'll see a little red number 38 by the Q&A button. Once they click that, it'll open it up.
Yeah.
And to see the ones that are answered, you just go to the answered questions, and then the answers are there. The open questions are not, there's obviously no answers. That's on the live feed, which will put the answers to those. And we haven't dismissed any questions. Although I'm not sure we're not going to be dismissing Joseph Murphy's questions. I think we know him.
I think he'll probably submit something else anytime now.
Well, it's good we can have a little bit of fun.
Okay. Is there a plan to replace trees, etc., that are being removed? We haven't really talked about that. It will be tough in this very narrow road corridor. So we are trying to minimize how many trees we take down. But there have been no plans to replace the trees in the corridor just because it's tight with the road and all the utilities. So
One thing the county might consider, and people can weigh in on this on their comment sheets too, we might provide trees for people to put on their property, as long as they're not over top of the utilities, to replace trees on the street, because this is a narrow right of way. There's a lot in it once we've got the road reconstructed and the sidewalk. So Mark's right, there's very little room to actually put trees in the right of way, but maybe there's places on people's private property where we could provide trees that they could put them there. But again, we wouldn't want them on top of your utilities to cause you problems in the future for those either.
mm-hmm.
Gary, what does it mean here on the thing here when we answer live? Does that mean that that's how we intend to do it, or because where you type the answer in, you push type answer and you type the answer and then the question disappears and goes over to the answered questions?
I'm fairly new with webinars, so I don't know the answer to that. If you wanted to try one and see what happens, it might not let you to type. It may just let you verbally answer the question, which you guys already have done.
Okay. There's a question here about the normal width of a street in Paris. Well, the width of a street, there's several different classes of streets. If we talk about a street like this, so if this was being developed as a subdivision, a new subdivision, and you guys help me out here, but I think 8.5 meters would be a fairly standard width for that, instead of the 7 that we're proposing here.
Yeah. 8 or 8.5, yeah.
Certainly, if you get into arterial roads, some of them were building 12 meters wide, but of course, then you're considering parking on some of those as well. 8.5 meter streets in a subdivision, usually they would allow parking on one side.
Yeah, and we should keep in mind those are today's standards, but all the streets in Paris were built at many different times when standards were different and always changing. So throughout Paris, you'll see various sizes, especially if there's parking or not parking, or what the makeup of the community is. So it definitely
generally, any street that we would rebuild, we would try and have at least a 6-meter platform. Like we rebuilt a piece of, was it Queen Street this year? And I think on that, I think we it's very steep street too. I think it's only like 6 meters wide.
Yeah.
But it's almost no traffic too. So that's a consideration as well.
Along with Cedar Street, we're hoping to do Laurel next year, and it's going to be very similar, between 7 and 8 meters. One more here. Any chance of a few trees being planted in the water pond area behind the cedars where trees have died? Oh, I don't know about that one. We'll have to, so is that the stormwater management for the cedars? That would be their private stormwater management pond area?
This could be the stormwater management pond that's to the south, for the cobblestone area there. That's another possibility. Maybe the person that put this in could point us in the direction of what one you're talking about. I'll put a. So I've asked them to please help us understand which pond this is.
Yeah, that's the one she's referring to, Rob.
Yeah,
is the
we'll
one
have to have a
for-
look at that. I'm not sure. We'll have a look at that. The infamous Mr. Murphy on the line maybe knows more about that than we do.
Can make him a panelist. Surprise.
And this is all documented, so we can't forget that we promised to have a look at these things. So that's good.
Someone else asked, will it be a
Yeah,
cement
but-
sidewalk or asphalt sidewalk? It'll be cement, 1.5
Well-
meters wide.
Well, actually, no, it'll be concrete. Cement is powder, remember?
Correct.
Yeah, I'd encourage anybody to put comments in about how the meeting worked and you know what your thoughts on it. We'll try and do better at the next one. I think that this has worked pretty good.
The county does have a tree contingency too. So if you ever want trees planted, we are big on planting trees. And we have a partnership with Chuck Beach, who's a tree guy all the way. So if you do have trees that maybe aren't covered during this piece of construction, please feel free to go through any of the 4 Paris councilors or just email myself, david.bailey@brant.ca, and we'll make sure we'll come out and take a look at the area. And if trees are required, you'll certainly get trees. We're a big tree county.
So there's a question here about a crosswalk at the 3-way stop. I don't think anything has been decided on that. To have a crosswalk there, you have to have somewhere to go. So seeing as the sidewalks are on the west side and then the south side, we're really only crossing a laneway into the condos. So it doesn't really cross the street. So I don't think that there will be an actual crosswalk there because there's no place to have it. It's just on a laneway. So.
Even with the stop sign, pedestrians have the right of way.
Yeah, that's true. So another advantage of having the 3-way stop there. We're certainly getting lots of debate on Facebook and in inquiries about the changes in the crosswalks or crossovers or whatever the definition is in the Highway Traffic Act in downtown Paris. So yeah, so I think in conclusion, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And you know, as I said, this was our first virtual public meeting. Any comments on that, please put them in there. We certainly are open to receiving comments during the comment period, and there's lots of opportunity to directly contact the panelists here. We know that there are certainly a couple of Paris councillors for sure that are very behind this project, and we think that you know, was planned for last year, but COVID certainly put that out of reach for us. And council did budget the money for it in 2020. So we don't see any issues for that going forward in 2021, and that is the plan. Mayor Bailey, do you have any last remarks?
I really don't, other than to thank everyone again for coming tonight. And I do know that David Kirk can sing, so he shouldn't be asking the mayor to sing when I know that he's quite capable of singing. No, it's something that has to be done. I think that we're doing our due diligence and again, taking down as little of the trees as we can. We're making it very user friendly. And, you know, the sidewalk thing, parking on the street thing, these are all things that there's never one good answer to. So there's always going to be people that want to park on the side, other people that don't want to see parked cars beside their house. So it's the best of a difficult situation, but I think starting this early with all this conversation, everyone should end up reasonably happy. And if you're not, I'm just typing in my address here. Someone's asked for it.
I did it for you, Mayor Bailey.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, thank you for coming. And if there's anything else we can do for you before we start, just let us know. It's easier to fix it before we begin than have to stop halfway through. So thank you very much for coming out tonight.